Welcome, everyone, to day 2 of our ILTACON programming week. My name is Sherry Capel. I am an evangelist here at Litera. I've been with this formation of the company about 8 years, but I've worked for, well, not 8 decades, but certainly many decades prior to that, working with legal technology professionals all that while. In fact, Kurt, you were at one point one of my clients.
I am, but now I am also an evangelist with Litera. My name's Kurt Meltzer, and I am the lucky guy who gets to work with Sherry all the time. I have been in the legal technology field for my entire career, about half the time as a vendor and half the time as an IT leader in a law firm. So we now find ourselves on the same side of the aisle, which has been great. And we've got a great session today for you.
It's a career highlight. Absolutely, Kurt. So I want to introduce the purpose of this entire week of programming. You know, everyone is heading off to ILTACON this year. Frankly, it's a new experience for everyone because this is a hybrid event. This is the first time ILT has ever done such a thing, where we have a number of people on site at Mandalay Bay, and we have a number of people who are attending virtually. And how this conference is getting put together, we wanted to prepare everyone to get ready, set to go to ILTACON, however you arrive there.
And the theme for today's session, session number 2, is community highlights at ILTACON. There are a number of different constituencies at the conference, each one contributing to the benefit of the entire organization. And so today we're going to be highlighting just a couple of those and making people aware of the value that they can deliver.
So one of the sessions today, Kurt, that I'm looking forward to is Bob Ambrogi, his session about the business partners and how really the business partners have become more engaged with the members and the members with the business partners. Their presence at ILTACON, their presence throughout the year working in ILTA activities, there's a lot to talk about this year, and I'm really eager to hear what Bob will be highlighting today.
And I'm going to be leading a session with the CIOs about talking about adoption and return on investment. These are topics that continually bubble up as we talk to people in the industry, getting people to adopt and getting the most value out of their investments. And this is something that most IT people are focused on, and a lot of these discussions occur at the conference. So we'll be talking about that as well. So after that session, that Sherry and I will come back and we will have a discussion summarizing what we've all learned today and pointing you in the direction of session number 3 tomorrow. So please stick around to the end, and we look forward to seeing you again then. See you then. Bye-bye.
See you then. Bye.
Welcome to this special edition of Law Insights, presented as part of Litera TV's Ready, Set, Go to ILTACON series, airing all this week. This is Bob Ambrogi, publisher of the blog Law Sites. And today I'm speaking with 2 of the companies that will be exhibiting at this first ever hybrid version of the ILTA conference. Let me introduce my guests today. First of all, I'm joined by Didi Cotto, Vice President Corporate Marketing at Foxit. Didi, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. And secondly, I am joined by Dan O'Day, co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of ECFX. Dan, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Bob. Thanks again for having me here.
So before we get to kind of talking about the conference and discussing exhibiting there, I'd like to just talk a little bit about what each of you do and what each of your companies do. So Didi, why don't you just start by introducing us a little bit to Foxit and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Foxit provides a number of solutions, basically all around PDF. We know PDF has been around for a long time, but it is a standard. It is an ISO standard. So there are many companies that provide technology around the PDF documents. And we basically go after 3 different types of markets within the PDF type of format. The first off, of course, as you all know, is the desktop product, where you can edit PDFs. We not only have a full-featured set of tools available for the desktop, but you can also use that online if you don't want to install anything on your system. We also have a mobile app that you can edit and view PDFs, and so you can do desktop, mobile, web. Wherever you are, you can basically edit your documents. And then the second area that we focus on with PDFs as well is more of the enterprise automation. So that's when you have mass quantities of documents and you need to scan them, you need to compress them. You may need to even redact mass quantities of documents that come in. And so we have a whole set of tools that'll do that. It'll also auto tag if you're worried about accessibility. There's a number of things you can do in kind of that realm. The target audience is more of the back end, mail rooms, right, that are bringing in mass quantities of documents. And then the third category, which is kind of where Foxit started actually, is in the SDK area, right? So we have a full set of APIs where developers can take our features and build them into their applications, whether it's a desktop application or a mobile app. We have a whole set of APIs. Some of our, for example, one of our main customers is Google. So if you're a user of Google Chrome, Google Docs, Gmail, then you're using our technology already. And so that's one of our products, as well as Microsoft. And we have a number of integrations as well, right, with DocuSign and iManage. So we have a full breadth of basically PDF solutions.
That's great. That's really interesting. I didn't know about the Google part of that. Dan, tell us about ECFX.
Well, so we automate the process around electronic court filing. So today inside a law firm, I like to say they're still switchboard operators, except instead of routing phone calls around, they tend to route emails around. What happens is you get a pager notice, you get a state court notice, maybe New Jersey courts, NYSIF, Michigan, what have you, and those emails have links in it. Someone's clicking on those links, logging to a court's website, downloading the documents, putting them in the document management system, notifying the rest of the team because it only came in to 1 or 2 people, and making sure docketing's aware of it. And this can take 5 minutes. It can take half an hour. And we simply automate that and do that in seconds. We work with firms of all sizes. We have small firms as 2 attorneys, 2 firms such as White and Case and Dens, which are using it for national coverage.
So I was looking at the prospectus for sponsors at this year's ILTACON, and it opens with the statement, 2021 is a year of firsts for us. Well, obviously it's been a year of firsts for all of us, and this is the first ever hybrid version of ILTACON. So I'm wondering, first of all, Didi, let me ask you this first. Has your company exhibited at ILTA in the past, or will this be your first time?
Actually, our first time was in 2019. And the interesting thing was when we exhibited, again, it was our first experience, but people were coming by the booth and they were saying, I know of you, I've heard of you. And apparently ILTA had done it's called a PDF shootout, where they actually do side-by-side comparison with some of our competitors. And there was a whole webinar that they put together, I think in the springtime. And we were not part of it. ILTA went ahead and recruited law firms, right, to pick their favorite PDF editor. And so one of our happy customers spoke on our behalf, and then talked about, and then of course they had other law firms talking about other products. But apparently it got pretty good coverage because people were coming by and just giving us, a lot of praise. And in fact, that's when they told us that we came out pretty well on that webinar. So since then I went back when I heard that from the team, I came back and I did research, and sure enough, it was there. And then so I followed up with ILTA and did a part 2 of this PDF shootout, and that was published last April of 2020. So that's on the website as well, on their website. So anyway, that was kind of an interesting experience for us. It was good that we had some publicity from ILTA prior to our first time there, which was really great. It was a really good experience.
Yeah. And did you participate as an exhibitor in the virtual conference last year?
We did. We had a booth as well. Yeah. It was kind of interesting how that all worked out. But yeah,
how did it work out?
Last year was the first for a lot of things.
Yeah. How did it work out? What did you think of it?
Actually, I think that was our first virtual event. I do run a team of product marketing managers, and we do lots of events. So we actually went to quite a few virtual events last year, and so that was our first. It was interesting. It was good. We had the whole booth set up, and people walked in. I think given the situation, it's probably the best thing that could have happened really during that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan, what about you? Have you guys exhibited at ILTA before?
ECFX is not. This will be our first ILTA show.
I know you have, because you've been around the industry forever. But
I've been there since we were talking about how it was LawNet before and all of that. But yeah, in my current role with the new company, the company is only 2.5 years old. As you know, we did Startup Alley just right before all of this hit, and this will be our first time at ILTA.
Yeah, and Startup Alley is a competition I organize for ABA Tech Show every year. And you did it. What, you did it in 2020 or 2019? I forget what year.
2020, right before we launched our product, and then certain things changed overnight.
Yeah. Good timing. So I'm curious, and both of you should just feel free to jump in. Don't feel like you have to wait for me to kind of call on you. But I'm curious, given the year we've been through, did that factor into at all your decision-making process about whether to attend the conference this year? Was it an easy decision, a hard decision? Dan, let me ask you that.
Well, it's always a hard decision when you're a small company and you have a very limited marketing budget, where to put it. Yeah. What had happened is we had initially signed up for the ILTA show, and when it went virtual, we decided to take that investment and roll it into the future shows, and let the ILTA organization keep succeeding. Right? We didn't want to deprive them of those funds, and so we'll be there in person, and we decided that we would go ahead with it, knowing that it was probably going to be a smaller show. But the question is how small in comparison to prior years. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, oftentimes the value in the show comes down to a handful of conversations, right? Mm-hmm. Talking to the right people, whether that be a customer, whether that be a partner, whether that be somebody in the press. It really comes down to those key 5 or 6 conversations that will get the value out of that whole show.
Yeah, that's a great point. Didi, what are you thinking? What was your kind of thought process about? Was there a decision-making process about whether to participate in ILTA this year, or were you kind of all in from the beginning?
Yeah, pretty much all in, because we had such a good experience in 2019. In fact, we had paid for 2020 and doubled the size of the booth. We were going to go all out, get the bar, the cocktail bar, and then the whole shebang, right? And then things went to a halt. But
if you got bottles of alcohol sitting around unused somewhere, I can give you my address.
You're right. So this year, again, I think we're a little hesitant on attending, not only because of the pandemic, but also because, who's going to attend, the number of attendees that are also going to come. So we were a little hesitant, so we scaled back a little bit, but we are definitely going to be there. And, we have a company update session that we also are sponsoring. So we're hoping that people can come, and, we'll talk about our new release. It was a previous release was called Phantom PDF, the desktop product, and we rebranded that to PDF Editor 11. So we'll, demo that and make announcements around that, as well as our new e-sign product. It's called Foxit Sign. So that's really exciting for our company as well. And I'm sure a lot of law firms, if you're using DocuSign, we also have integration with DocuSign. But if for those maybe, smaller firms are still looking for an e-sign solution, we have that option as well.
Yeah. What are you expecting, or what should perhaps attend? I mean, you've probably been briefed on this pretty well, but what should attendees be expecting in terms of an exhibit hall? How is it going to be a business as usual kind of exhibit hall, or will there be kinds of precautions built in? Do you know, Dan? What have they told you on that?
So yeah, there's a few things they've done this year that will be a little different than prior years. The exhibit hall overall is smaller. There are net fewer vendors this year, but they've also spaced the booths apart by 10 feet. And I'm interested to see what that experience is like, because we're used to our booths being right next to each other in fairly tight rows. And I do think there's going to be some interesting new traffic flow patterns because there's going to be all this space between the booths and people will be able to probably walk between them. It's a little unclear where they're putting the backs up for the booths and stuff, but it is going to be a different layout. And so while there are fewer booths, there may be just as much walking involved. So,
yeah, I was wondering, I know I talked to Joy Heath Rush back a while ago, several months ago, when they first decided to go ahead with this hybrid version. And I think at that point they were talking about having kind of a directed traffic patterns through the exhibit hall, where you could only kind of walk one way and up one aisle and another way, sort of like the grocery store or something. Has been. Dee, what are you expecting about that? What are you expecting that experience to be like in terms of the flow of the exhibit hall and what it will look like?
It's really fun. And so I think they have some games going on. But yeah, well, it'll be interesting how they manage like the food, where's the food going to be set up and how they're going to manage all that as well.
That kind of raises the questions of what happens with the traditional, social events and cocktail parties and all of that. What have they talked about that at all? Again, Dee, I realize you missed the webinar, but what have you heard in terms of what might be going on in that regard? Or Dan, what have you heard?
Yeah, so, I don't know what to expect, but Dan, maybe you.
They don't have as many of the events, and I think they're expecting the vendors to kind of fill in the gap more than they used to. They used to really limit the vendor evening, right? There's only one night that vendors could really reliably get clients together, and then the question was who's competing for the biggest steak dinner and wine. You had all the big vendors doing fairly big events that evening. And so now it sounds like there's a lot more openings for vendors to do things with their clients. It will be interesting to see if the large vendors, the iManages, the Thomson Reuters of the world, are doing anything big. Relativity always had their big raging party. Partner, and I'll find out more about that soon. But right now, I think it is going to be smaller groups that are organized by different sets of vendors, right?
Right. And I would be remiss if the list of parties if I didn't mention Latera, which is the host of the show, because they always do a pretty big party at.
They do indeed.
Well.
Latera's got some awesome marketing behind it and does a fantastic job of getting people together. And so they may, I don't know if Latera has anything.
Yeah. It was interesting also looking at the prospectus for sponsors, because among the sponsorship opportunities this year are things like hand sanitizer and masks. And I think there was even something like a head health and safety sponsorship or something like that. So what happens with swag? Is this swag going to be sort of a normal thing, or are there precautions or differences in how swag will be handled this year? Do you know?
I don't know. I can see we're going all out on swag. So we're handing out magic wands, kind of Harry Potter style, because we've had clients describe our product as being like magic. And so we thought we would take those client comments and turn it into a theme this year. And so we'll be bringing magic to other firms with that. And we'll also be doing, the bags and usual stuff so that people can hold their swag. I think there might be, even if there is less swag, I think people will want to get back to kind of some of that ritual, some of that normalcy, if you will.
Yeah, it's funny because the very last conference I've been to was that ABA Tech Show 2020, which was in February, I think it was, or early March, I forget now, not long before everything happened. And there's a lot of the vendors at that conference were giving out hand sanitizer as swag, even before, and that was kind of before everything kind of really went downhill. But, 4 weeks later, you couldn't get hand sanitizer if your life depended on it. No, I was wishing I had taken all those little samples that they were giving out at ABA Tech Show and stuffed my bag with them. But at that point, I didn't know I was going to need them. Did you you guys have anything special planned around swag or anything like that?
I live in the Bay Area, so we had just, we had removed the mask mandates, things were opening up. And so, thinking about swag, initially last year we would have had masks, logoed masks and hand sanitizer. So this year we didn't think about any of that. We thought instead I started putting away all my stuff. Yeah. And then now, the last few weeks, the Delta virus. Yeah. So, but we still have, the notebooks that we typically give out. They're nice hardcover, orange. Orange is our branding colors. So the notebooks and then the pens, and then we have a little screwdriver set, little tiny with the little, the screwdriver, the Phillips, right? It's kind of in a little keychain kind of thing, which is handy when you're, when you need a quick tool, especially since we set up the booths a lot of times. So we're there with these tools or your computer, so a loose screw or something. So yeah, we'll have those on hand as well. Yeah.
So, what do you, I guess you both kind of mentioned, kind of questions about what the attendance will be like. What are you expecting? I mean, I know that, I think I've heard they've distributed a early registration list, and I know we got a ways to go. So, I've heard the numbers aren't through the roof on that list so far. But again, I think this is probably one where I'm guessing a lot of people are kind of holding out to see, till the last minute, but I think a lot of potential attendees are kind of taking a wait and see how things are that week approach to the whole thing. I don't know. Either of you have any expectations or hearing anything in terms of attendance?
So they did release some initial numbers, and they were a bit low. Now, I have a lot of insight into running conferences at Thomson Reuters and what those things look like. The leading indicator is actually not the registration list; it's the hotel block information. And I did just see an announcement today that Saturday night hotel block is sold out. People tend to register for the hotel rooms a couple weeks before they sign up. But the attendance will be less. I mean, the reality is that a lot of firms did not budget for ILTA, quite frankly. I spoke to some of our clients who will not be attending because they're like, the management team says, if you don't have to be in the office, we're not sending you to a conference. It's, there's a lot of that going on. So if we get half the normal attendance, I will be pleasantly surprised, but it may end up being, I'm suspecting right now, about a third of the normal crowd, which is going to be intimate and nice in some ways. I actually don't mind that personally from making connections point of view.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that intimacy, really. There's a couple of conferences that I've gone to over the years that as they've grown, I've almost regretted the fact that they've grown because you lose that intimacy. So there is something for that. Didi, what are you expecting in that regard, or what are you hoping for?
Yeah, I agree with Dan. I think a lot of, just having those conversations, whatever we can get there, I think will be useful. More the intimate setting, of course, would be useful than the big, rat race and carnival-like atmosphere, I think, at most of these conferences, right, where people just pass by. But we know for sure that ILTACON is one of the premier tech shows for us in the legal space. So, we've talked to a lot of our customers, and I always ask, where do you go to learn about technology? Where do you go to learn about, other vendors that are supplying technology? And they always talk about ILTA, the resources that ILTA has, the conference, but also the breadth, right, of information that they have available on their website. So it was pretty much a no-brainer for us to be at this conference. And so, we're hoping to have some good conversations.
Yeah. Here's a question totally unrelated to COVID. But I wonder, you both have a lot of experience being in exhibit halls, both as exhibitors and I'm guessing as attendees at conferences as well. And I wondered if you have any advice for people attending a conference like ILTA on how to get the most out of the exhibit hall or out of a conversation with an exhibitor in the exhibit hall.
So, my recommendation is you do want to cover the whole floor, but you don't want to necessarily have a conversation with every vendor, right? You don't have the time for that. So most vendors have enough information on the booths, on the external display to give you a sense of what they do. And so just, read the booth and look at that and say, is this something I'm interested in talking about? And then engage someone at the booth to have the conversation, right? There are also people who are just simply looking for swag and they just want to get that and move on. And I get that. And I'm both as a vendor and as an attendee, I'm fine with that. At the end of the day, if you're interested, then have the conversation and learn more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I guess I'm not even counting the people who are just looking for swags, but the people who are seriously there because they're interested in maybe shopping for a particular product or learning a little bit more about what's out there on the market. I mean, those are the people I think I'm more talking about.
Right. And the exhibit floor is going to do something like you might be saying, oh, we're shopping for a DMS, but the DMS vendors are well known. There's a list of them. Right. You've got a lot of resources, and you may want to have conversations at ILTA to kind of shore things up there. But the interesting thing is going to be discovering things you weren't even aware existed.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That you weren't even aware there was a solution to this problem. I'm a little biased because our product kind of falls into that category for many people. But, you're like, oh, actually, I could use that. That would be a useful tool that I was unaware existed before.
Yeah. Dee Dee, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan, you brought up. Because I run marketing, I provide the signage, right? So you basically have 5 seconds to catch somebody as they walk by. And so what is that, that grabber? And so, what is that messaging? What does the signage say? And a lot of people will stop by. This is their opportunity to really check out other products. Of course, they might have a short list of ones they really want to talk to. But, there are a lot of people that are just roaming, and you have 5 seconds to grab their attention. We also have in the booth, the staff is trained to do lead scoring. So of course, when we scan the leads, we can right away just say, okay, is this somebody that wants just the giveaway, or is it a hot prospect that I just had a, 20-minute conversation with, right? So it's all done right there in the booth. So when we come back, we can start, taking those leads and then do the follow-ups. It'll be an interesting experience, when we show up there, but yeah, that's, hopefully we'll see, enough people that, we'll have those good conversations with.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the flow does work. Because my own practice at an exhibit hall is often to kind of do the first pass where I'm kind of scoping it out and making some mental notes of places I want to go back to or people I want to talk to, and then take that time to go back and make those stops when I can find time to do that. It'd be interesting to see whether the flow in any way, inhibits that or makes it a little harder to kind of get around that way. I'm really looking forward to this event. We are just about out of time. So I wanted to just see if either of you or invite either of you to share any kind of final thoughts or last words before we wrap up. Dee Dee, anything else you'd like to mention?
We're looking forward to seeing people there at ILTACON. If you want to write down our booth number, 2229. And we do have, again, the company update that we're doing on Wednesday at 10:15. So look out for that. And also, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow with ILTA. That's also going to go over you're going to play this later, right? So you won't see it.
This will have already happened by the time this gets seen.
Right. So the replay should be available actually on the ILTA website. Yeah. And so I would encourage people to check that out and see if it's something that, might be useful for your law firm. And then I'll be happy to meet you at the booth and we can give you a demo and everything else that you need.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the booth number because I meant to ask you about that earlier and completely forgot. Dan, how about you?
So, we are looking forward to this. This will be our first live event. We are booth 1325. And if you stop by, you'll get a magic wand. We are also glad to be partnered with ILTA. We did an ILTA webinar last month that was very well attended with White & Case, where White & Case talked about their experience of rolling out ECFX. And if anyone's interested, please feel free to contact me or we'll send you a recording of that ILTA webinar. And really appreciate the time, Bob, and look forward to seeing all of you. And Dee Dee, I'll be stopping by to get one of those toolkits to put our booth together. So I already noted that.
And should I expect to see you in a wizard hat, Dan? Or?
Yeah, I'm thinking something Dumbledore-ish. We'll see what we got available. Maybe that and pajamas. It's a good look. A robe that works.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. We've been speaking here with Dee Dee Cotto, Vice President, Corporate Marketing at Foxit, and Dan O'Day, the co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of ECFX. Thank you so much to both of you for doing this.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
All right,
nice meeting you, Dee.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Nice meeting you.
Hi, welcome to Litera TV. My name's Kurt Meltzer, and I'm a Litera evangelist. I'm your host for this session. Joining me today are two large law CIOs, Niraj Rajpal and John Cutler, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. But we're going to talk today about return on investment and adoption and the correlation between the two and the pros and cons of taking that approach. I used to be in consulting, as John was, and when a client would ask me to do an ROI analysis, I'd say, sure, what do you want? It was very fungible. I'm not a huge believer in ROI, but it is a very important factor in many different firms, and some firms, they won't do anything without it. So I think there's a debate possible around that issue, but I want to hear what my friends had to say. So John, could you please start us off, introduce yourself, and tell us how you got to where you are today, please?
Sure, Kurt. I'm happy to. I'm the CIO at Finnegan, and we're a large IP firm. So we specialize in intellectual property law, patents, trademarks, IP litigation. I've been here 23 years, so clearly there's something about it that I like, and I really do enjoy working with the IP attorneys. They're mostly scientists and very technical, and they can be challenging, but it makes the work very rewarding. And as you mentioned, for 9 years prior, I was with Pricewaterhouse as a consultant, and all my clients were law firms and corporate law departments. And that's when I first met Kurt Meltzer. I think you were in your first stint at Chadbourne and Park, right. And been a longtime friend. So thanks for the invitation today. I'm
very happy you could join us. Thank you, John. Niraj, what's it all about?
So I'm the CIO to Stroke, US-based firm, 4 offices. New York is our largest office. We are litigation, financial restructuring, corporate, lots of different practice areas. God, I've been around so long, I can't even remember. Kurt, we go back so far back.
Yeah.
Brian Cave, Morrison Forster, K&L Gates, I'm not even going to go beyond that. It's been a long journey. I've been around a long time. So thank you for the invite, Kurt.
Yes, thank you. So we've all seen lots of different things in our industry and the changes in priorities, but there are some things that never change. And one of those is trying to get people to adopt new technology. But we've seen a little bit of change in the pandemic, but it's always about embracing and managing change. And that's hard for lawyers, I think. It's hard for most people. We've all seen it for many lawyers being difficult. And part of the challenge, I think, is because they bill by time. And when they take on a new tool that replaces an old one, they're not as familiar with it. So they're slower and they feel like it holds them back and they were comfortable with the old way. So changing that muscle memory is always hard. And trying to convince people that it's going to be worth it, that's part of the challenge. So I know a lot of firms go through an analysis that includes return on investment, or sometimes you just have to do it on faith. So Niraj, how does your firm or firms in the past, either current or former, deal with that adoption or bringing in new technology? What sort of analysis have you gone through?
So I'll tell you, Kurt, it's a great question, because I'll tell you, you're right. It's ROI is hard to quantify at times, right? Some of it is soft. Some of it can be quantified. So it really depends on the project, really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So, I'll give you an example. I'm chair of the Tech and Futures Committee at the firm, and we go through this, debate quite regularly. And it's, we have one thing that we're looking at right now, and I'll be honest, on the innovation front. See, it's not just about buying a shiny new toy and trying to sell it to the firm, saying, if you buy this, this is going to happen. It's not just about that. See, for me, it's even improving a current business process. I mean, if you can improve a business process and become more efficient because it's an indirect or direct connection to the bottom line, that goes a long way. In fact, we are working on something right now where I've gone to the firm and said, if we do this, if we change this on the billing side, just to give you an example, I mean, here's how the bottom line can improve. And if you want to quantify it in that perspective, it's like a no-brainer decision. But if not, I mean, think about what it does from a day-to-day perspective in just getting a bill out to a client, right? So it's as simple as that you can change and modify and improve that, people do understand. I think that's the way to sell it.
Yeah, I think if it's an IT project, it'll fail. But if it's a business project and they understand the business value, and at least you're going to get their attention. It might not be enough to make it successful, but it's a start. John, how about you?
Yeah, I think those are all very valid points. I was thinking about this. We did an ROI analysis for our strategy, I would say. And about 5 years ago, adopted a cloud-first strategy, and moving to net documents is probably the first most visible example of a move to the cloud, where it's software as a service and you're no longer supporting all this infrastructure on-prem, and the maintenance of availability and reliability and the patching is all done by somebody else. That's very attractive, right? And once we made that decision, our projects are more evaluated by, do they further the strategy? Every year we may move a few applications or a few platforms to the cloud. And so we're supporting the strategy. We may not do an ROI analysis on every one of those individual projects, but we're supporting the strategy. And a good example of that is even during COVID, during the pandemic, my team, I'm very proud of them, was able to move everyone from Exchange on-prem, Exchange 2016, to Exchange Online. Wow. And they truly got the last mailbox migrated by the end of December of 2020. So we met our goal. And then there's this other cost in the ROI formula, which is the cost of cybersecurity, right? And the risk of cybersecurity. And never was I happier to be reading in the headlines about Exchange servers under attack in the first quarter of 2021, when I realized we had moved all of our data to the cloud, and the Exchange cloud was not under this particular attack, right? It was attacking on-prem Exchange 2016 servers.
Genius move.
Well, the timing was fortunate, and I like to remind the partners of that. But I think it really avoided a cost, right? Because I see the headlines where they say 10,000 servers were hacked, and there's a true cost of remediation and investigation and reputational damage. So I think in part, the ROI calculation needs to take the cybersecurity costs into effect and the risks.
Very much so. I'm very impressed by your team being able to do that under the circumstances last year, and it has put you in such a great position. I was CIO at a firm where we implemented document management in the cloud 18 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I thought, boy, we got to get email up there too. And I don't know if that firm has it in the cloud right now, but it was clear that that was the right strategy in the long term. It's a little bit easier, obviously, to do it now than it was back then, but still a great achievement. So that's exciting. Very, very cool for you and your team. Helps you sleep better at night, I'm sure.
Right. Well, thanks for being a pioneer 18 years ago, because I think that helps get us in a position where we could do it 5 years ago.
Now, John, I couldn't agree more, because I'll tell you some of the things that we tell our attorneys now. We have a maintenance cycle and this will not be available. But guess what? Email is always available now. I mean, that, it goes a long way.
That's really huge.
Well, even Microsoft could have a bad day, but we won't. That's a different topic for different.
I'm not going there, John.
Yeah,
it's a different conversation.
No, that is very, very true. So once you've made a decision to go with a new tool and you stick with your strategy, John, as you said, but there's still a difference, the muscle memories are there. They have to learn how to do something new. They have to learn new menus or procedures. So, of course, I assume there's some training available, not that everybody always takes advantage of it, but are there other things that you do to make people aware of what's going on, and how do you convince them that this is the right strategy going forward? Niraj?
So, before we do anything, before a project which affects the attorneys comes into play, we do a proof of concept. We have to do it. I mean, IT cannot make a decision in a vacuum. As you rightly said, Kurt, in the very beginning, if IT makes a decision and it's an IT tool, quote unquote, it's going to fail. So you really have to get the attorneys involved. I say get the associates involved. If there's a tech committee, get them involved. If it's we did a litigation, when we moved the litigation data into the cloud, and we did this whole splash about why we were doing this, we really got the litigators involved. I mean, if they are the ones who are behind a project, the associates are behind a project, the paralegals for that matter, that goes a long way. And, it's sometimes it's good to do organic growth. Sometimes it's good to do a full marketing and training spin, and this is how we are doing it. Right. But it really depends on the project. But getting the stakeholders involved early is, in my opinion, the way to success.
Yeah, I've always found that getting at least one, if not two or three partner champions to really sell it to the firm, as opposed to having it come again from
absolutely
the CIO, that's really one of the keys to success. John, have you found that too?
I have found that, and I echo what Niraj mentioned. We do a lot of the same approaches. One thing we've done lately to improve adoption, because I think you can always improve it. You can look at the numbers of who's using these systems, and I think it's ripe for continual improvement. We've tried to give them an incentive to take the NetDocuments example, because document management is something not everyone takes to, honestly. But we gave them an incentive to use the system by putting data they might be interested there automatically. And in our case, as a patent firm, we have software, Practice Link from Aurora North, that will wake up every morning, talk to the patent office's PAIR system, the Patent Application Information Retrieval System, pull out the outgoing correspondence, take those documents, upload them into the correct matter workspace in NetDocuments, and then give the attorneys a daily digest of what's been uploaded for the day with links to the system. So by having that information at their fingertips now, instead of routing it by email or having them have to fetch it themselves, draws them into the system. And we've put some framework around those documents to make them actionable. Maybe they automatically notify the client when a certain type of office action comes in with an email. And I think that's working. It's a long project. It's one of our multi-year projects. But in the last 6 months, we've gotten to the training stage and we're working on the adoption.
That's very exciting, enhancing their workflow and making it easier and delivering extra value. And just the tool just becomes second nature to them under that circumstance.
That would be the hope. Yeah. And it is, as you know, it's browser based, and we try to mention, we know there's shadow IT. We know people use tools in their personal life, and then they come to the office and expect those tools to work the same way. So if we can show that we're moving the firm's technology to something like that's easy and web-based and modern, have a modern interface, I think that helps. So we remind people of that.
That's the personalization of corporate IT it presents a lot of challenges and opportunities at the same time, and facilitating it through that sort of interface that they're more comfortable with. That always helps a lot. I tend to use the example of Excel. Excel is not intuitive. It may never be intuitive. There's not much, you're going to learn a certain amount, and then you really have to apply yourself to learn how much more powerful it can be. But that, I think, is the exception, and we're seeing more tools focused on, simple clicks and obvious choices as to how to take more advantage of it. And that's the kind of software I think lawyers are more comfortable with, and you're going to get a better return on.
So Kurt, I couldn't agree with you more, because we're investing in technologies now on business intelligence, right? Pulling data from the different repositories, the ERP systems, and giving information to the attorneys, quickly, securely on mobile devices. Letting them know how a matter is going, a matter is doing, and the profitability analysis. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, we have really, really focused on the bottom line efficiency, because I think that's where we are going. We're all going there, so it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that. I think the generational differences that are impacting law firms now provide new opportunities to enhance this technology that has been more challenging in the past. In other words, older lawyers are less excited and focused on embracing the technology, and the younger lawyers can't imagine working without it. So it's, I've seen a lot of progress through my whole career, and it's really exciting to see how that formula is really changing for everybody. So when we're looking at introducing new tools, let's stick with document management, for example. I hear anywhere from 40 or 50% of users in a firm using the document management system to 100%. And 100% means the firm has instituted some very significant restrictions on the ability to do things. Most firms aren't that draconian, if you will. So 40 to 50% versus 100%. Most, of course, are somewhere in the middle, and that's just one example. You might take email. I would imagine 100% of people use email, but do they use it well? That's a different issue. From your perspective, what depending on the tool, how do you determine what an acceptable level of adoption is, John?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I'd say Finnegan is between those two extremes. I've seen documents that are anonymized by firm, and I feel like we're in the middle of the pack. So I feel okay. There's always room for improvement, but it's not too bad. I've started to come at it, maybe because I've been in the business a long time, like it sounds all three of us have been. I get less concerned if every last attorney is in the document management system and doing the work themselves. My main concern is the work product getting into the document management system? So maybe that's their assistant, right? Maybe their administrative assistant is the one who handles the documents and makes sure they're in the right matter workspace, and that email correspondence with ND mail is getting to the right matter workspace. So I'm kind of okay if the lawyer finds, it to be an extra step and they just want to work and be productive and do the things that they do. As long as the data gets there. And I do want them to be comfortable with finding the data and accessing it. But if they're not the ones literally uploading to the system, I've learned to be somewhat at peace with that. I'd love to improve it. And Niraj, if you have advice on how to improve it, I'm all ears.
So So I think we're in the middle of the pack as well. And every firm I've been with, improvement is something we all can do. We recently, literally a couple of months ago, launched an initiative around digitization, right? So the information governance, records management, how do we get better in how we, file things, how we find things, et cetera. I mean, we are a 140-year-old firm, so you can just imagine how much data we have. So the fact that we have made this a project is in my opinion, a great thing. We are really putting our efforts into, let's just improve where we are today, where we are going, getting less reliant on paper. But let's be realistic. It's going to take time. It's a multi-year strategy for us. We want to, in this one, I think it'll be a new tool that comes into play that is going to be a change behavior and change management that we'll have to work with the right people and the exec committee, et cetera. But we want to get better. And I think every firm out there is in the same boat. Everybody has decided that, yes, they want to be more efficient. The whole real estate discussion, post-pandemic, do we really need all the real estate that we have? So real estate is going to shrink. That means we have to be more electronic and more digital. So that's where we are going.
Yeah, I think a lot of law firms are sick of paying to store paper in their offices. And the pandemic has only heightened that awareness. The amount of printing, most firms that I've talked to, the printing volumes have gone down. It's not necessarily easy to track what they're printing at home, but it's such a pain in the neck to print at home that people are just finding a way to work without it. And that's long overdue, but if it took a pandemic to make that happen, well, at least there's a little bit of a silver lining there.
Isn't that the conversation we had a year and a half ago? Oh my God, the pandemic, how are we going to do business? And here we are. Technology continues to be the focus and the foundation for success, for how we practice law. So it's a great.
Exactly. And I recall at least 5 years ago, one significant client stated that they didn't want anybody to print outside of the firm's office, meaning not print at home. And, people were scratching their heads, how the heck is that even possible? And because we all knew as technologists, of course that's possible. You don't need to print to get all your work done. But the habits that people have adopted over the years have changed. But now, again, we're getting closer to that. So the pandemic has been a proof of concept of many things, and it's started to work pretty quickly, which is exciting. But I'm glad to hear you both feel you don't go crazy trying to get 100% adoption. That's never a good strategy. So how do you track the usage of your software tools? Do you have key performance indicators to help measure impact? And how do you use these tools to help you drive further adoption?
I'll give a simple example, and I think a more positive story than perhaps document management, and that was Teams adoption. Kurt and I were on the call earlier, and I mentioned we were fortunate that Finnegan had deployed Teams even before COVID, but it was not highly adopted outside of IT. Kind of IT was using it, and other people were made aware, but the usage was not there. Pandemic happens, people start meeting through Teams, just like we're having this meeting. And there, the KPIs come right from Microsoft. Microsoft will take all your statistics for how many meetings and how many chats and put it in Power BI and present it in a really nice way to make sense. And so in the early months of the pandemic, I was sharing those Power BI charts with the management committee who was interested in, who's working, and they would ask the question, where are people working, right? And you can map all their Office 365 logins using Power BI on an actual map that's clickable to say, wow, there's 5 people in Colorado. Who are those people? Really great to have tools like that. So I give Microsoft a lot of credit for making those KPIs fairly easy to access and easy for people to digest.
They have built a huge capability to do that. The Latera software tools now take advantage of that same capability, and firms can turn it on or off if they're concerned about the security of it. But it really gives you a lot of insight as to how the tools are being used. And I think more people will be embracing those statistics over time. It's just, It makes more sense. And if you see people who are not using it, you can say, hey, we see you're not using it.
Exactly.
You might get some benefit
and it was
out of it.
exponential growth. I left out the result, but yeah, the team's growth was just outstanding. It was a good success story.
That's fantastic. Niraj, how about you? I know you've done a lot with metrics over the years.
Yeah, so came from ServiceNow, my last firm, ServiceNow. So we used lots of foundational tools to build lots of dashboards, custom dashboards. I mean, at Strook, we're a Cisco shop, so we are a WebEx collaboration suite. I mean, same metrics, we can pull anything we want from, the tools Cisco provides us. And, it's funny, when the pandemic happened, we had a mix of Skype, and then we launched Jabber, and now we are, WebEx collaboration suite. So the tools are there, I mean, we were concerned, will the attorneys use it? And as John said, it was very surprising, pleasantly surprising that they adopted it really quickly. Let's look at time entry. I mean, in the old days, the attorneys, the partners were looking at their assistants to do time entry. I mean, that's gone, right? I mean, it's the new world, and everybody's now, technology does work, and now we're focused on the mobility piece. We're focused on, people still continuing to work in a hybrid environment, and what kind of tools they need to succeed. That's what we're focused on, and that's where the power of these tools come into play.
That really is great. It's been fun to see the evolution of this sort of analysis over time. I mean, I was asking, I don't know how many years ago, for more data and background on how we're using the tools, and people would give me blank stares. And then the web came along, like, okay, on the web we can see every click, and I know exactly what's going on. But any desktop tool, forget it. We're blind. And I would ask Microsoft more than everybody else, because we'd be spending more on them than everybody else. Like, who's using Word, and how are they using it, and what are they using it for? And, I don't know.
Even down to the document level. I mean, I don't get this question every day, but occasionally a pretty important PDF will be communicated to a group at the firm. And you may get the question like, hey, how many people access that document? And you can actually answer that question if it's posted in SharePoint Online or one of these Microsoft tools, which is pretty interesting, because back in the day when you just hit send on an email, you may not readily know how many people read the document, but you do know if you send it to a PDF that's out in SharePoint Online.
Yep. It really is great. It's so much more power than there ever has been. So it's exciting to think about what's going to come down the road. I have no idea. Neural networks will all be plugged in through our necks, right?
If it makes my job easier, I'll sign up for the surgery. So
okay. Okay, you first. Now, despite everybody's best attempts, there are occasions where you'll put something in and everybody said, yep, we should all use this, and it just doesn't happen. And it's silly to keep paying maintenance on something that doesn't get adopted. So has that ever happened to either of you? And what was the tipping point? That's a really tough thing to go through.
Let me take that one, Kurt. So it is definitely tough, when you get into a situation where you think you developed / bought something where you think the attorneys are going to use it and it doesn't work. It's tough all around. I think that's where, having been around so long in the industry, you realize that you cannot make decisions in a vacuum. And if the decisions were made in a vacuum, how can you correct those decisions? Either to retire the product, bring something in, change the way the behavior is, do some more training, whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, the siloed made decisions just don't work anymore. It just absolutely doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I can only think of one example, and I'm not going to shame the vendor. And it's actually a vendor we work with very closely with lots of other products. But not every product can be a hit. If we have 9 products from this company, 1 was not a hit. And you mentioned ROI at the top. I can tell you we used ROI to kind of kill off the product, because we said, look, we spend X on this and it has Y users, accounting for X amount of revenue. And it got to the point where it just really didn't make sense and was kind of painfully obvious that it didn't make sense. Yeah. And maybe that particular product was ahead of its time. Who knows the reason why? But it is actually the only example I can think of in the last 23 years where we truly pulled the plug on something. And that's where we did take a cold financial look at it to help make the case. Right.
I think that's the easiest, when the finances don't add up, even if the the 6 people who can't live without it
Right.
crying, well, but it's just not paying off. Unless, of course, one of those 6 is your top breadwinner.
Yeah, that could lead to
A little star with the decision.
Yep, we're keeping it, no problem. So, how do you think the pandemic, in our last few minutes, how do you think the pandemic and this extended period of working from home will impact adoption? Do you really think the community that you work with now, have they changed in some way? Are they going to be more willing to embrace technology? Are they asking for more things? Do they ask more intelligent questions now? Is there really going to be a long-term impact, or are we going to just kind of go back to the way things used to be?
So I don't think we're going back. So I think I'm blessed that I work at a firm which truly believes in technology and continues to invest in technology. But we're never going back. I mean, we're going to continue in this hybrid world, and people are, the younger associates are asking for more. Even our partners are asking for more. They want more technology, and we are, this tech committee which I mentioned that I'm chairing is focused on that. We want to give the ability to our attorneys to succeed, to further improve client service, and that's the bottom line. To make sure our clients are happy.
Exactly. And I agree 100% with what Neeraj said. We are not going back. I believe the skills we picked up using these collaboration tools like Teams are permanent, and we'll be using them in hybrid scenarios where some people are in the office and some people are out. We're already seeing that. At some level, supporting from the help desk AV is more challenging in hybrid than it ever was before the pandemic or even during. It's new animal, and it's gonna be with us for a while.
Yeah, I think pre-pandemic, you would have a good idea of where people were going to be to prepare for that video conference, right? There was some predictability to it. And now that people know that it's flexible, they're going to change things up at the last minute. They're going to introduce variables and add new people. And now I got to do the presenting. And now this person has to take the, it's going to create a lot more variables.
It does. It's off to a good start. I'm very pleasantly surprised at how well it's been going. In the month of June, we had a day where as many as 200 people were on our Washington office. That's a lot. And wow. It really keeps my help desk and AV teams on their toes. But it actually, I was there for those days also and saw it firsthand. And it worked pretty well, almost surprisingly well.
That's great. Well, you've obviously set the base to support that going forward. And as you mentioned when we spoke earlier, John, Microsoft has put a lot more into Teams and extended its capabilities. And I'm sure Cisco and Zoom are doing the same because now the standards have changed forever, as we've seen, and the expectations are high. I think the one shift in technology that I saw that was similar to this, and it was adopted almost as quickly, was when BlackBerrys first came out. I never had anything embraced so quickly across the firm as the BlackBerry. And because it was just so obvious, yes, we must use this, and this makes life better for us. And now video conferencing and collaboration, I think, has hit the same chord with everybody. And it's really exciting to see that, because those of us who've been around for a while have been trying to encourage it, but necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Correct.
It's so as horrible as the pandemic has been from a health perspective, there are benefits that we've all seen and hopefully will benefit from for the long term. So we're at the end of our time, gentlemen. Thank you so much for providing your insights and your time. I value both, and I value your friendship, and I do appreciate you being with us, and I hope to see you in person before too long.
Yep. That as well.
Thanks again.
Great,
and
thanks.
Thanks to our audience for joining us today. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, Kurt. Bye.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
Why? Hello, Kurt.
Hello, Sherry.
How are you doing?
Great.
That was a fantastic conversation, the CIO Roundtable. So let's go ahead and get started with our live Q&A session here, following our programming for day 2 of Ready, Set, Go to ILTACON. I am Sherry Capel, and I'm an evangelist here at Litera. I am equally, I think this is about my 24th getting ready for ILTACON. And so I'm really eager to hear all about what folks talked about today. So, Kurt?
Thanks, Sherry. I'm Kurt Meltzer. As you might have seen in the last segment, I'm an evangelist with Litera. And this is actually, well, I first went to ILTACON 25 years ago. So I haven't been to every one in that time frame, but most of them, at least 20. So in the first session today, which was hosted by Bob Ambrogi, the publisher of Law Sites, and a frequent contributor to Litera TV, he spoke with Dan O'Day from ECFX and Didi Cato from Foxit Software about the conference from an exhibitor's perspective, and how this year is going to be different because it's hybrid and because of the pandemic. And they talked about how sanitizers will be part of the swag and face masks and so on. Not something you can typically see at conferences in the past. But ILTACON has always been designed to be the primary educational conference for the legal technology community, and there's extensive learning opportunities. But it's also a symbiotic relationship with the vendor community in being able to get together with people and meet with people and explain all in one location what's happening in the legal technology industry from the vendor side. So, Sherry, you've been in the industry as a vendor for more than 30 years, and you've seen a lot of changes in the conference during that time. So how has it evolved as a win-win opportunity for both attendees and business partners alike?
You know, over the years, the progression of value and that symbiotic relationship between members of ILTA and business partners of ILTA, it has just simply grown, expanded, and improved year over year over year. We are no longer called vendors or suppliers, and we're no longer cut out as business partners from so much of the programming or so much of the events. We really are now true partners with the members. And when you come to ILTACON, it is an opportunity to learn and mirror the conversations against what we're having to do right now. And if right now means we have to plan for the next 3 years, you can learn about that too and engage with the vendors on that too. So those are just some of the changes that I've seen. I think I'm more excited to go to this ILTACON probably than any other. And that happens every single year because those conversations are so rich.
And as more than one person has said in our series so far, the fact that there's going to be fewer attendees than in the past makes it a little more intimate. And as we all know, when you go to smaller conferences, you get a chance to interact with more people, and perhaps you have more in-depth conversations. And there's opportunities to do that not just with your peers, but with the business partners as well. So
and virtually too, Kurt. I mean, this is like a 360-degree experience because we're not going to just get to interact with them in person. We'll have everyone we get to kind of include. And I love that inclusion. That to me is, shall we say, what's been, fostered over the years, and really ILTACON itself mirrors that change.
Yeah, I think that the conference has adapted to the times, of course. Exactly. And we've all had to adapt out of necessity, but they've turned it around and made it an advantage in a way that we might not have seen otherwise. So that silver lining should really pay dividends for everyone who participates.
Yeah. So, Kurt, you had a discussion in your CIO roundtable with John Cutler of Finnegan and Niraj from Strook, the CIO of Strook. It really brought home this emphasis that we're seeing on not only the need for more technology, but the need for an approach and impact of technology adoption. So as someone who's lived through the challenges of adoption from both sides, the law firm CIO and as a business partner, that perspective, How has that challenge evolved, and what are the primary factors that impact technology adoption today?
This is kind of my favorite topic because there's no one answer for everybody, but there have been themes over the years. When I started in the legal technology industry, which is 34 years ago, no, 38 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about why do we need technology and why would lawyers touch a keyboard and so on. It's a long time ago. And over the years, the conversations have become much more productive. And essentially the question is now, what's the best way to leverage technology for the practice of law? Much more healthy conversation. And as much as we might not like it, there has been an adjustment over the years based on age. The longer you've been using technology, the more comfortable you become with it, the more you expect to use it in your daily practice. There's still plenty of people who, let's just say, are over 50, who didn't really grow up with technology, didn't have the internet growing up, didn't revolve their lives around it, and they thought, it was a tool and it was nice to have, but it wasn't essential to their work. And as those people age out of the practice or move on to other things, the conversations are much more in depth about, well, I have a greater understanding and comfort level. I don't want to have to learn all the details of everything, but I'll appreciate the value the technology can bring, and as long as someone can deliver on that, then it's something that they can support. And as we all know, the dynamics of the law firm businesses, the older people are typically the ones who are in charge, the ones with the purse strings, the ones who set the strategy. And again, as they age out and younger people come along who are more comfortable with technology, there's clearly been a greater comfort level. The second factor, I think, is the push by clients to get their outside counsel to embrace technology. It's always been the case that when a client says jump, you say how high. You need to be responsive to them, and they start sending RFPs. What are you using to facilitate greater efficiency within your organization? And it started with extranets. I think that used to be typical, and then it evolved into security, and now it's much more. What are you doing about artificial intelligence and so on? So clients and the clock organization in particular have been driving greater adoption, and as a result of that, I really think that, and the growth of legal ops within the client organizations. I think that the boom in legal technology and startups is driven really by that. Once the client starts saying, well, we need to see more of this, then people are more willing to make those investments and look at new technologies and find ways to distinguish themselves. So that dynamic, I mean, really, I don't know how many years ago, because I don't follow it, the financial tech industry boomed, and now it's a huge force. Well, legal tech might not be that big, but it is growing significantly. And there's huge investments being made. There are billion-dollar corporations in legal tech, which we haven't seen before. That all is making it easier for everybody to embrace the technology. But the third factor, maybe the biggest one, is necessity. We just talked about in this session with John and Niraj, we had to embrace video conferencing, whether it be Teams or Zoom or WebEx. There was no other choice. So it had to happen. And once they did that, they're never going back. They'll always use that. As we talked about, the BlackBerry, as soon as someone, from a competitive standpoint, you saw all your competitors being able to respond to their clients wherever and whenever they were. Oh my God, we have to have that. And nothing was ever embraced that quickly before. So once it's a clear necessity and you can't work without it, that's a big deal. So the trick is for vendors to keep coming up with things that are a necessity for people in the law firm community, and we and others are doing that by trying to listen and understand where the hot buttons are for our customers. So that's my little diatribe about that.
The aspects of serving the client have always been, a fantastic way to frame, what problems are you solving to serve the client is always the fantastic way of representing your technology and of recognizing that it will be that necessity or not.
Okay, Sherry, in a couple more minutes that we have here, I want to do something a little bit fun. I want you to tell us, typically at the ILTA conference, the most memorable things that happen are unplanned. And those are the stories we like to tell. It's like any vacation you go on, you typically say what horrible thing happened during it and how more interesting. You never say, oh yeah, everything was beautiful, we had a lovely time, the food was great. You always say, oh, you should have seen what happened. So tell us a story from the ILTA conference, one of your favorite stories from all the experiences that you've had there.
So I have two. One is less of a story and more of a moment. One of the moments, and this was say ILTACON number 20. All right. So I'd obviously been attending ILTACON for a long time. And a gentleman by the name of George Rudoy, who worked at the time at Sherman and Sterling in New York, came up to the vendor booth that I was at and said, wait a minute, Sherry, when exactly did you go to the dark side? I said, George, I've always been a vendor. I've never worked in a firm. And he just had such surprise on his face. And all he said to me was, that tells me that you're one of the really good ones, because I was indistinguishable from a member, which I thought was kind of interesting, but obviously there had been, bad experiences, I think, or something to that effect. But in any case, that was a really rewarding moment. But I think that one of my most memorable experiences was in chairing a panel that brought together iManage, folks from Microsoft, folks who were representing a very large project team about how they rolled out a brand new version of both the DMS and of Office all at one time. And I think why that was so poignant is that it was the first time that I had seen a panel who were all shepherding change at the same moment, at the same table, and every single one of them, without any rehearsal, recognized that what was changing, yes, was their technology, but honestly, that wasn't it. What was changing was the way we change, and we focused so much of our conversation on that, and it was a great moment. It was kind of transformational and sort of sets us up for today. How about you, Kurt? What are yours?
I have one favorite story that, of course, is humorous. It is to me, at least. It was 1997 or 1998. Conference was at the Arizona Biltmore in Phoenix, as it had been forever at that point. And I had the honor of giving a speech on how to give a good speech, which was very daunting. So thankfully, there were only about 30 or 40 people there. And one of them was a friend of mine who I solicited to assist, because there was a moment where I wanted to talk about putting a shill in the audience and having someone further the discussion, which might make it more valuable to the attendees. So my friend Len Rubin agreed to do this. And at the right moment, Len raises his hand. He goes, I just like to say that this is probably the best speech I've ever heard in my life. And he, goes on and on. Everybody's roaring. And so I didn't know what he was going to say. It was very funny. So after that, we tell a group of our friends this story. Everybody laughs. And then we go to a group session that was large. There were, back in those days, you would get together in the middle of the day. Everybody would get together at once. And so the first speaker got up there and said, well, I went to a speech this morning on how to give a good speech. And Alan Dindis, one of our friends that we had told the story to, shouted out so that several hundred people could hear him, I heard that was the best speech that had ever been given. and I was crying. I was laughing so hard. It was unbelievable. He was such a quick wit, Alan. Both Len and Alan. Yeah.
That engagement is so fun. And working on that speaker side of the conference is, like you say, just so much of an honor. Really, you get to learn a lot.
Experience. You learn a lot from doing that. You're trying to teach others, but you do wind up learning a lot. So that's all the time we have today. I know we could tell stories all day long, but we have one more segment tomorrow, the final segment of Ready, Set, Go to ILTACON. And make sure to check that out because 4 of the conference content committee members join, and they join us tomorrow. And Sherry leads a discussion about what you can expect from the educational perspective. And of course, there is so much to look forward to, and you'll learn all about that tomorrow. So thanks very much for joining us today. Please check back again with us tomorrow. Have a great one.
Thank you, everyone.